I hear a lot of people say that you couldn't make Duke Nukem today, and I agree with that, but not for the same reasons that they're probably thinking. I don't think it's so much to do with the social climate or whatever, it's more to do with the fact that the people in charge of this IP just blew it too many times. It feels weird to say that you're a fan of Duke Nukem, which is possibly the biggest fumbled bag in the history of the entire video game industry. But there's no question that he left a lasting impression on all who played Duke Nukem 3D in the 90s. He was like a twisted, genetically modified, lab-grown human built with stem cells harvested from every big action star who ever lived. He was super buff, he had 3 billion guns, and all he did was crush his enemies and eat their bones while washing it down with some kind of legally distinct parody soda. You had all these classic voice lines by John St. John, the voice of Big the Cat. The music was awesome, the environments were detailed and had much more verticality than most FPS games at the time, and the game itself was also just a lot of fun. It only made sense to make a billion sequels, but save for a couple of spin-offs, they only really managed to make one main sequel, and that game was Duke Nukem Forever, which was not a good video game. Dick Dukem Whatever is possibly the most legendary story of video game development hell. For the sake of what I actually want to talk about today, I won't go over it in grotesque detail, and there are a lot of people who could explain it better than me. But the short version is essentially that the development of Duke Nukem Forever was mismanaged, mishandled, misguided, and severely lacking in focus and direction. After over a decade of this dynamic, it eventually ended up in the hands of Gearbox Software, who, in the year 2011, finally completed and released a video game that they called Duke Nukem Forever. This was one of the most aggressively mediocre video games to come out. It was shallow, it was underbaked, the graphics looked like a hamster's penis, and it wasn't even particularly funny. Even Saints Row 5 was slightly fun whenever you got a headshot and it went like... The game that would become known as Duck Kick'em Nevermore would probably have been a disappointment no matter when it dropped, but unfortunately the FPS genre had evolved tremendously in the time that it took to make this game, and it just seemed kind of quaint in comparison. But several years later, something magical happened. A little while ago, Duke Nukem got some incredible news, the kind of news that most fan bases can only dream of. An abandoned and unfinished build of Duke Nukem Forever from 2001 was leaked to the public for the world to play. This was huge. This was bigger than anything I could have ever imagined, and why oh why didn't it happen to Conquer 12 Tales instead? I'm pretty sure all I did for 2 days straight was play around with this busted up alpha stage build, essentially looking into an alternate universe where they pulled themselves together and got this thing out the door when they were originally supposed to. As an unfinished build, it was obviously very buggy, very bare bones, in a lot of cases it was rough. And it was far from completion, but it was fascinating, and it reinvigorated the fans in a way that I had never seen before. So it makes perfect sense that one of the first things to happen after the fact was a bunch of fans banding together to take this unfinished build and finish it. This is the story of the Duke Nukem Forever 2001 Restoration Project, an ongoing effort to take the remnants of the 2001 build of Duke Nukem Forever and turn it into a full game. Early demo versions of this have been available for a while now, and this is, at least as far as I know, the most recent version I'm aware of, and I think it's quite incredible. And better than that, according to the README, the game was actually made by Spider-Man himself. Spider-Man was a game developer. I just couldn't see it. It's one thing to be able to play beta content, but when fans step up to the plate and take it to the next level, that's very special. Some of you may remember that a very similar thing happened with Ocarina of Time a while back, where a bunch of beta maps from the game were leaked to the public and eventually got turned into the ROM hack that we now call the Space World 97 experience. This is a pretty similar situation, and one that I hope we see for all kinds of other games in the future. In its current state, the first chapter of the game has been recreated. It's been a while since I played that unreleased build, but I can already see a tremendous difference even in just the way the game works. In the original, I couldn't even find a way to play in full screen or at a resolution higher than the weirdo shit they had back in 2001. That's no longer an issue, which makes recording a lot easier. Because this is a fan-made attempt to finish a game that was never fully planned, or at the very least never made any such detailed plans public, I imagine that not all of what you're seeing is exactly what the developers were originally going for, but is rather a very educated stab at what direction they might have taken based on the leftovers from the unreleased build, while also cross-referencing that with pre-release trailers of the game. It's often hard to tell where either of those components begin and end, however, because I think they've done a good job at making it seamless and authentic, to the point that I almost forgot that it was unofficial a lot of the time. It's still got some crap to iron out. The game started crashing during this one particular part, and you got some funky graphical stuff going on, like if I looked in the bathroom mirror and started seeing a giant floating shower handle stretching in and out of existence, I would have thought I ate a bad Cheeto, but for the most part, it felt pretty well put together. I think what impressed me the most was the shooting. It felt far more polished and satisfying. The hit detection was better, and the reactivity from the game was a lot more visceral. It was a lot better than the game that actually came out, that's for sure. This version of the game sees the return of pig cops and these head crabs from Half-Life, I mean Alien, but also Half-Life. I think it's fair to say that this version was definitely taking cues from that game, which makes a lot of sense given the timing and the fact that they're both PC-based FPS games. That and Half-Life is just really good. The main enemies you fight in this game are possessed people who've been taken over by these freaky alien parasites. Combined with the amount of time in elevator shafts and ventilation ducts, not to mention set pieces blowing up and moving around while you're actually playing, instead of just watching it happen in a cutscene, I'd have to try really hard not to make that connection. It can get kinda scary too, like when the parasites infest a corpse, they actually start moving around with a severed head attached to them. Now that's some shit right there. Duke Forever is a very interactive game, seemingly evolving one of the things that made Duke Nukem 3D very special in the first place. Hey, what are you guys doing in there? Turn on the lights, I almost tripped over my own mighty foot. In between blasting enemies to bits, you're running around the map putting out fires, sometimes literally, to progress through the game. It can be a little tricky to get into at times. You know, games like this nowadays usually have a bunch of waypoints and markers telling you what exact thing you should be doing and where it is.
Where is it?
This game is from another era where the player is trusted to pick up on the context of what's happening and figure it out from there. Really, it's all about observation and attention, and once you get into it, you find that it's not way too out of line. Even today, there are some impressive qualities about the game, like how everyone you kill has a unique name, almost 2 decades before The Last of Us 2. Oh, look at that. The game is full of that trademark juvenile Duke Nukem humor that we all know and love, but my favorite joke in the game is a very subtle one that most people might not even notice. When you get a call from Graves, you look at the bottom left of the screen and discover that his frequency is 140.85. Does that sound familiar to you? I also can't get enough of this anti-smoking poster that says, "It's cool when I do it, but you're not me. Cut it out." Well, shit. Can't argue with that. Also, there's a really funny part with all these trip mines and you can set them all off by throwing a rotisserie chicken at them. I mean, come on, that's just funny. Duke Nukem Forever 2001 Restoration Project is a very promising piece of work. I don't know a whole lot about the development process behind this ambitious recreation, but I think one day, if they keep it up, we might get a full game. We could get the Duke Nukem Forever that everybody thought they were gonna get, the one that Duke deserved. It could be, one day, something beautiful, something groovy, something that kicks ass. That's a wrap for today, but come back tomorrow because we'll be talking about a ROM hack of a game that has been absent from the marathon so far. It might not be your favorite game, but it is one of mine. Let's just say that it grows on you. Stay tuned, and Merry Christmas, cousins!